Alright, welcome back to the Blender 3 Docwalk. So we are starting the section on editors, and the first editor we are going to be talking about will be the 3D viewport. So this document is the introduction to the 3D viewport. We're going to be going over the main regions of the 3D viewport. So let's jump right in. Alright, to get started, we're going to talk about areas really quickly. This is kind of a flashback to a much earlier episode. If you recall, Blender is divided up into several areas, which are marked by these border lines right here, right? So this whole area is currently being used as the 3D viewport, and this separation line, we can actually move its size, right? We can change the sizes of our areas, these two areas down here. Okay. Now, any area is capable of, I guess, housing any possible editor. So currently, if this area, or I'm sorry, this button right here, this little drop-down menu, if I click on that, this is the editor type selector. This has every editor type native to Blender. So the thing to remember is that you can select 3D viewport for any area. You can have multiple instantiations of the same editor open in the same workspace. Like I have here, I've got two 3D viewports now. So yeah, just a quick kind of little reminder and refresher of that. So yeah, let's really start moving down here. I'll reorient these guys. Turn this guy back to properties. Where are you, guy? There she is. Okay. All right. So the 3D viewport, this particular editor, is kind of the heavyweight of Blender. Well, maybe not the heavyweight. It carries a lot of weight. It's kind of a very prominent editor throughout Blender. I mean, hence why it's the first thing you see when you open Blender. So we're going to quickly talk about the header region and a brief overview of the tool region and the sidebar. Okay, so across here, this whole top is the header region. Now, because a 3D viewport is used for modeling, painting, animating, and a variety of other sculpting, all sorts of things, right? The header region will change according to what mode you're in or what you're using it for. So the first thing I'd like to draw your attention to is the mode selector right here, the mode dropdown. Each mode is used for something different. But yeah, so this is how you select your mode. I've said this before, a quick shortcut to jump back and forth between edit mode and object mode. Object is the default mode when you first start Blender up. Edit mode is, well, edit mode, right? A quick shortcut is the tab key. If I just hit the tab key, I jump back and forth between edit mode and object mode. The next object over is the view menu. And now the view obviously contains tools that are relevant to, well, the actual view, like how you see what you are seeing. For instance, you have your toolbar. You can toggle on and off right here. Your sidebar is right here. Tool settings, adjust last operation. We talked about that just the other video. Navigation controls, right? So view is really just kind of that. We're going to go over each of these in much more detail, but not right now. We're just kind of doing a quick overview. So select obviously is options for selection modes, like you can see all, none, invert, box select, circle select, lasso select. Then add is the menu that you use to add object types to the scene. Next menu over is the object menu. Now this menu is only available when you are in object mode, but this menu contains options that allow you to transform and manipulate objects on your scene or within your scene. You'll notice it if I come down here, whoops, and hit tab to go into edit mode, the object menu will disappear and it'll be replaced with mesh, vertex, edge, face, and UV. Okay, now the center region right here where you should see global if you have it open, if you haven't altered anything. That's the default setting here. But so this center section we're going to talk about next. This first part, this is your transform orientations. Well, it contains your transform orientations. Again, we're going to go over these in much more detail several videos from now, but soon enough. But this is kind of how your objects orient themselves. According to what? How do they orient themselves? And which has a huge effect on how you manipulate them. And, well, it just has a huge effect on how they transform and translate in the space. Now, this next selection is your pivot point selection, or your pivot selection. And this is how, okay, so if this is your transform orientations, then your pivot point is around what does your object transform? What is it anchored to? In relationship to what? How does it? Well, I guess we'll get into this in a lot more detail soon. But yeah, you'll notice down here, right in the very center. If I move my 3D cursor, whoops. Let's get it over here. You'll see this little orange dot in the center of my cube right here. Currently, right, that would be the origin of my cube. And I'll select my transform gizmo. Okay, you'll notice that it is completely oriented around the little orange dot. That is my pivot point. See it? And as anything that I do, is done around that pivot point. So that's what your pivot point is. That, for instance, if I switch it to 3D cursor, and again we're going to go over this in much more detail, it has now oriented around the 3D cursor, and if I move this, well, now the 3D cursor is the pivot point. So hopefully that makes a little bit more sense what that is. The next drop down over here, or the next tool we have is snapping. Okay, and we talked about snapping a little bit, but yeah, we're going to go over that in insane detail later. And the next drop down that we have over here is proportional editing. This is actually really cool. This is the drop-off select for your proportional editing. So basically this is how much of an effect one edit has on the other selected elements around it, or not necessarily selected, but how much of an effect, how do I say this? All right, I thought I would just give you a quick demonstration of proportional edit. So I'm going to add a mesh really quickly here, set it down, we'll size it up, move it to the center, go into edit mode, and we want, well, no, yeah, faces work. Okay. So, so I'm going to turn proportional editing off really quickly here, and so we have a good idea of kind of typical behavior, right? So I'm going to select a face and just drag it upward. Okay. All right, that's typical behavior. Grab a face, drag it upward. All right. That's pretty standard, right? Okay, now I'm turning proportional edit on, and now I'm going to grab a face and pull it up. Now you see this came up down here, and I want to amp my proportional size up, so I'm going to bring it up. Now it's turned into a hill. Now everywhere I do that, it's going to do that same sort of thing. There you go. That's proportional edit. So Just from this, you can probably get a pretty good idea of kind of the behavior of these other options. Again, we're going to go over this in much more detail. Alright, so we've covered mode and menus. We've just talked about the transform controls here. And so over here to the far right are our display and shading controls. So the first drop down that we see is the object type visibility. Now this doesn't just control visibility, but it also controls editability. So you can see the first option here is mesh. This little eye obviously is the visibility of any mesh within our scene. So if I turn that off, all meshes will disappear. This is whether or not you can edit it. So if I turn that off, the mesh will still appear, but I won't be able to edit anymore. So that's pretty cut and dry. This has got everything in it, from your cameras and your lights to armatures, texts, just anything in your viewport. You can turn on and off its visibility and or its editability. Our next drop down is for gizmos. This is for our viewport gizmos. This turns on and off different gizmos within your viewport that you can use. Navigations here, okay, active tools, active objects, and again we're going to go over this in more detail later. And then you can just shut everything off, on and off. So this next one over here is X-ray toggle. So you can turn on and off at kind of this, see how that we can now kind of see through everything. In object mode it's a little bit more clear, but yeah, that's X-ray vision. Very helpful. Like incredibly helpful. So that's pretty much all there is to that one. And then over here we have our viewport shading. We have 4, I guess, immediate options, and then we've got the drop down. The first one is wireframe view. We've used this multiple times already. This should look pretty familiar. Next one is solid. Then we have material and render. Oops. And there we go. And render. Took a second. All right, so those are the 4 viewport shading options, and then each one of these, all 4 of these have their own kind of set of sub options. So for render, if we click on this, you'll notice that's somewhat different from material options, which are different from solid options, which are different from your wireframe options. So viewport shading, these 4 options, it just changes the shading of your 3D viewport. And the last couple of things we really need to talk about, which I guess we don't really need to talk about them. We've gone over these plenty before, but of course we've got the toolbar right here, which you can open and close by tapping T. And then we've got our sidebar on the other side, which we can open and close by tapping N. A reminder that the options within your toolbar will change depending on what mode you're in. Likewise, the sidebar also will, but in addition, the sidebar contains information about the active object, your selected objects, plural, as well as editor properties, or properties of the editor itself, as well as properties of your current active tool. So that is the 3D viewport. In the next video, we'll be talking about the startup scene. Thanks again for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe. See you guys next time.